Welcome everyone to the Universal Peace Federation. My name is Ray Lapalkin, and the Universal Peace Federation is an international and interreligious network of individuals and organizations, including representatives from religion, government, civil society, and the private sector, and it's dedicated to achieving world peace. An NGO in general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, UPF supports the work of the United Nations, particularly in the areas of interfaith peace building, peace education, and the strengthening of marriage and family. And our program today is titled The Role of Advancing Civility in the Public Square, and it's part two. Part one we watched earlier, and that was with Ms. Tammy Pfeiffer, and she, along with some others, created what they call the Dignity Index, and it's trying to rank people's civility in their presentations and how they speak. And this was a webinar I'd like to show you that we did recently, and it was part of the IMAP, which is the International Media Association for Peace, Association of UPF. IMAP is an association of media professionals, and it recognizes the vital role that journalists play in guarding against totalitarianism and supporting the expansion of freedom. IMAP represents a worldwide professional network of journalists who support a socially responsible and moral media to convey accurate content, address the challenges of our time based on the highest principles of ethical journalism, and understanding that universal values are key elements of a world of peace. So this is part two of the role of media in advancing civility. And the the gentleman who gave the presentation at this webinar was Dr. Thomas Selover, and his title was Civic Virtue and Co-Righteousness. And Dr. Selover is the international coordinator for the International Association of Academicians for Peace, and he's also the international president of the Professors Peace Academy. So please enjoy this webinar.
Now I'd like to go ahead and move on to our next panelist, Dr. Thomas Selover. And Dr. Selover is International Coordinator for the International Association of Academicians for Peace, IAAP, and he's the International President of Professors Peace Academy, Professors World Peace Academy, PWPA. He previously served as president of Sunhak UP Graduate University outside of Seoul, Korea, and he holds a doctorate in comparative religion and East Asian philosophy from Harvard University. Dr. Selover has taught for many years at universities and colleges in Canada and the US, as well as in China and Korea. His current research focus is on the values of human relatedness in promoting a society of interdependence and mutual prosperity. So welcome, Dr. Selover.
Well, thank you very much, Peggy. Thank you for your wonderful introduction, and I'm so grateful for Tammy's amazing presentation. I think this is really on very, very good ground. I want to say at the outset that it's part of the long-standing mission of PWPA, PWPA International and other countries as well, to promote intelligent, respectful discussion and dialogue on major issues affecting world peace. So I'm very happy to be able to participate together with you in today's webinar. I want to begin, if I can share my screen, let me see if that will work smoothly enough. Okay, let's try this. Okay, good. With something that happened a long time ago, back in the 1970s, when I was applying to college. One of the colleges that I applied to was Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And at that time, I saw an editorial cover image from their student magazine, and that image has stayed with me ever since. Now, I haven't been able to locate that image, though I've scoured the internet to try to find it. So I'm going to have to ask you to imagine it with me and bear with me as I try to describe it. So it's the image of two arms and hands. One, we can say African-American, and the other Caucasian American. Now, not this image, but I'm starting from this one. Imagine modifying the image you see on the screen in the following way. The African-American hand was actually holding a paintbrush and was busy painting the Caucasian arm with white paint, chalk white. And meanwhile, at the same time, the Caucasian hand was painting the African-American arm black, ink black. So I found this image to be a marvelous capturing of portraying the other as a polar opposite, exaggerating difference and dehumanizing each other in the process. It was a brilliant portrayal, in my opinion, a portrayal of portrayal and also of betrayal. Today, 50 years later, we are still suffering from and perpetuating the same phenomenon of polarization in the case of race and also in the case of politics that I'm coming to now. In today's political rhetoric, as we're all aware of, we have the discussion of red states versus blue states. So these are the untied states of America. Here are the blue ones and the red ones. And this again is a matter of exaggerating differences and dehumanizing one's opponents. If people are reacting without reflecting, just based on their emotions, then this is what we see. Two sides pitted against each other. It's a kind of conflagration of emotion, as we've just been exploring. And that's why it's very hard to have a reasonable political discussion in America today, because all of our opinions get so emotionally charged. In fact, there are people in every single state who hold a range of political opinions. This means that there are no really red states or blue states. All the states are red, white, and blue. Now, I'd like to draw a comparison with some sports journalism. In sports journalism, reporting is characterized by balanced accounts, showing the virtues of both sides, and of the different plays and how the game proceeded, and who's ahead at this point and who's ahead at that point. The losers are always still credited with great plays and great efforts along the way. That's what makes good sports journalism. So the even-handedness and fair rhetoric of sports journalism can be a model for political journalism as well. So I'm suggesting that we apply an analogy from soccer to the question about wings. In political journalism, we talk about the left wing and the right wing. But in soccer, we have the left wing player or the left winger, and we have the right winger, as you can see here in the upper part of this illustration. Both of the wings, what is their purpose? Their goal is to support the center forward so the center forward can make the goal for the sake of the whole team together. But rather than thinking of the wings, red versus blue, a better configuration would be, well, there's the red wing, okay, and there's the blue wing, okay, but both contribute to and uphold the center direction of where we're trying to go together. And this brings up a concept that is found around in the discussions of UPF called headwing. A headwing is a term that was coined by PWPA founder, Dr. Sun-Myung Moon, who, by the way, was a great fan of soccer. I want to talk a little bit about headwing. Dr. Moon originally articulated the concept of headwing in a theological context. So let me just give a short quotation. The left wing, the left and right wings fight if there's no head, don't they? The head, what is the head? The head contains the root of the nervous system. Then what, or who, is the root of all roots? The root of all roots is God. Headwing thought comes from God, and that's why the original mind, which takes the highest position within us, finds satisfaction in it. Now I'm picking up the discussion. In order for a headwing approach to develop, There has to be mutual respect for each side and for the whole purpose. In the absence of mutual respect, which we've just learned in great detail, it's very difficult for productive give and take to develop. Without the consciousness that we're all on the same team and the mindset to support the focus, then we cannot win. In discerning the nature and direction of headwing thought, it can be helpful to recall the destination that headwing is headed toward, like this plane over here on the right. In terms of social vision, the destination can be described as interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values. And by the way, the two words that are in my title, you might remember, civic virtue and co-righteousness, actually derive from the concept of universal values. They are, in a way, translations of each other. So a headwing approach in journalism, then, would aim toward rising above labels and using neutral terminology that invites shared understanding. On the political level, advancing headwing would not be so much trying to convince others of the righteousness of one's own position or views, but rather seeking a fruitful discussion based on the faith that there is a headwing solution. It is possible to find something which is forward of both of the existing left and right positions, and which includes the righteous principles on both sides. Then we also need the determination to find that solution through vigorous shared thinking and discussion. In a counterpoint to the Marxist dialectic approach, which holds that progress advances through contradiction and struggle, headwing approach suggests that the actual way forward is neither from only the right or only the left by itself, but rather an understanding of give and take together with bottom line respect for both sides. The overall goal is shared improvement, or what we could term co-progress. A consequence of this way of thinking is that the foundation of this headwing strategy has to do with co-righteousness. It's not only on one side. Conscientiousness is on both sides, as we've just heard about conscience. So that kind of universal value and co-righteousness that can be understood cross-culturally and beyond the rhetorical divides of factions on the political right or the political left. Applied to journalism, headwing would indicate that going for coverage that is helpful in portraying issues so that real mutual understanding and real discussion and co-progress can develop. But we've heard that polarization is dehumanizing. And so the antidote would be rehumanization. The Cambridge Dictionary suggests that rehumanization means something like giving back to someone the human qualities of independent thought, feeling for other people, the sense of empathy, other things. When I think about humanization, then I want to bring a couple of points from the Confucian tradition, if I may. Confucian traditions of civic virtue. Confucius said on one passage that the noble person is not invariably on one side or the other, but for what is right. The phrase "what is right" can also be translated as what is appropriate, what is fitting to the situation, bringing in the context and calling for discernment. Another translation of the same passage says the master said, well, exemplary persons in making their way in the world, and we all want to be exemplary persons and to uphold that for one another, are neither bent on nor absolutely against anything. Rather, they go with what is appropriate. So that's the character for right and for appropriate. Another Confucian phrase that I find helpful is "pe au bouton," which means harmony without conformity. The idea is that noble folks, and we all want to be that, can harmonize with each other even when they don't agree. Whereas those who give in to pettiness cannot harmonize even when they fully agree with each other. We can even call this harmony in diversity. A third Confucian recommendation is to pay attention in speaking to the tone of voice as well as to the actual language. The observation is that a kind tone or an unkind tone has more effect on others than the literal kind or unkind meaning of the words spoken. Colloquially, it ain't what you say, it's the way that you say it. The foundation for the recognition of co-righteousness is the affirmation that each person is endowed with a conscience. Therefore, the key to restoring civility is not trying to get each other to agree with our views, but rather promoting the spirit and context of conscientious consciousness and mutual respect. One more. In order to promote a constructive atmosphere of serious discussion for those who hold very different viewpoints, I'd like to suggest the peace-building attitude of win-win-win thinking. Basically, win-win-win thinking means the whole inclusive purpose is always considered. Compromise and cooperation is not only for the mutual advantage of two sides, for me and you, but it includes, and even primarily, the benefit of the whole purpose in which we are all involved together. Win-win-win thinking, win-win-win, in political arrangements, economic pursuits, and social life can be a basic guideline at every level. That is, a headway approach leading to co-progress. In conclusion, I note that the founding affirmations of IMAP include the phrase, universally shared values lead to mutual cooperation. Universally shared values, as I noted earlier, is another way of speaking about co-righteousness and also civic virtue. In fostering mutual cooperation, the educational role of the media is not about demonstrating what to think, but rather how to think, how to be thoughtful, how to consider. Educating by example the process of weighing perspectives and possibilities and discerning what is fitting and appropriate in the present context. But we cannot expect the media to change until we ourselves as individuals and eventually as a society change what we're searching for. So as a last point, I'd like to offer a suggestion for a kind of self-monitoring for social media. Just as there are self-activated controls for limiting obscene and violent content, so there ought to be voluntary controls for limiting inflammatory rhetoric. By deselecting and screening out sources that indulge in incendiary commentary and unfriending the unfriendly, individuals can improve their own mental and relational health and contribute to a reordering of the social media environment for all concerned. So these are the thoughts that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that webinar. I thought it was very interesting. And Dr. Selover talked a lot about polarization, and we're seeing that a lot in America today in politics and socially. And as he talked about, a lot of emotionally charged opinions. And I had just read an article recently concerning the Civil War, and of course, we know primarily it was about the secession of the southern states from the Union over the basis or the topic of slavery. But one of the things on this in this article, they talked about how just the rhetoric became so extreme on both sides that it just incited violence from both the southern states and the northern states. So rather than trying to resolve the issue of slavery diplomatically, of course, as we all know, it led to this civil war where thousands and thousands of lives were lost and lives disrupted. So, of course, we're trying to prevent that from happening again, whether it's on a national scale or an international scale. So we need to find a solution for this. And I think Dr. Selover brought up some interesting points. And a lot of these are concepts of the Universal Peace Federation. And one of the concepts that he brought up was head-wing ideology. And he gave the analogy of sports. For instance, in hockey and soccer, you have the front line, you have a center, and then you have two wings or forwards with the center. And it's like that in both sports. And of course, they work together to advance to score the goal. And likewise, he gave the analogy of an airplane. You have a left wing and a right wing, but you have the head of the plane, of course, gives the direction, the thought, and that's the direction that the plane needs to go. So you need both wings. You need the left wing and you need the right wing, but you need to have respect and balance in order for the plane to reach its destination. And of course, as we're seeing in America today, there is just too much discord between the left and the right. So a lot of mutual respect is needed, as Dr. Selover mentioned. So he mentioned about the destination should be the three goals of the Universal Peace Federation: interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. So when the left and right can work together, centered on this headwing, then we can reach that destination. And he talked about co-righteousness. He talked about harmony and diversity. Diversity is good, but we need to create harmony in it, not divisiveness. So if we can pay attention to the tone of the voice as well, he talked about that. He mentioned about how the tone of our voice can have more effect in the message than the message itself. In other words, displaying anger and hatred is not going to solve the problem. And a lot of times we lose the message because of the hatred of the message that's given. So, and he also mentioned about media, that media should not really express or try to emphasize what to think, but how to think it. So how can we reach this destination? So with this head-wing ideology, a God-centered ideology, then really America can unite together the left wing and the right wing. So that was the emphasis of this webinar, and also the principles of the unification, or the Universal Peace Federation. So I hope you enjoyed this program. If you have any questions or you'd like to get in touch with us to study these principles further, please do. Our contact information is at the end of the program. And I always like to, again, offer the complimentary biographies of our co-founders, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon and Reverend Sun Myung Moon. They're co-founders of Universal Peace Federation. Please get in touch with us if you would like a copy. And thank you for joining us today.